Right now, RFK is the second highest polling Democrat in the Democratic primary. I think polls have him somewhere around 12 to 16 points, depending on which poll it is. I'm not sure what the averages are these days. It clearly has gone down a little bit since he's gotten into the race, in part because he seems to be running on, were there a Republican platform, as opposed to just saying we agree with whatever Donald Trump says. He appears largely to be running a campaign to appeal to Republican voters, as if he was running for, I don't know, an outside chance of becoming Donald Trump's vice presidential candidate. Like I've said over and over again in announcing a unity ticket, and here's Robert F. Kennedy. I've got a bunch of ideas about that. But here he is. And this is super disappointing because, well, one, we should just say the headline, I think, on NBC that was reporting this was incorrect. And maybe we can show that after this. But this is at the Iowa State Fair, NBC News' Ali Vitali asked RFK Jr. about whether he would sign a bill into law that would protect federal law that would protect abortions along the lines of Roe v. Wade, which, of course, was amended by Casey, which basically said you could not, that women have and people who can have children have a constitutional right to an abortion up to 20 weeks, I think it was, if I remember correctly. And after that, states could constrain it, because it is widely considered that fetuses are not viable outside of the womb until 20 to 24 weeks.
Would you sign a federal protection to protect the rights that were in the Roe precedent if you were president?
I believe that a decision to abort a child should be up to the women during the first 3 months of life.
So you would cap it at 15 weeks?
Yes.
Or 21 weeks?
Yeah, for 3 months.
So 3 months. You would sign a federal cap on that?
Yes, I would.
Okay. So not unlimited access to abortion, as many in the Democratic Party.
I think the states, once a child is viable outside the womb, I think then the state has an interest in protecting that child. That supersedes, and I think that the state has an interest at every level, but at some point, I'm for medical freedom. I think individuals ought to be able to make their own choices.
Which is why I'm surprised to hear you say you'd cap it.
Well, because, I think at some point you'd say, the state, I would personally not. I think the states have a right to protect a child once the child becomes viable. That right increases, and I think there's very, very few abortions that are performed after that period of time anyway. Most abortions are performed during the first 3 months of life, and I think that's when I feel I fought harder than anybody in this country for medical freedom.
And that's why I will restrict their freedom.
Well,
to 15 weeks.
He said 3 months. And that's closer to 12 weeks.
Doing the math here.
Doing the math.
Well, then she said 15, I guess.
Well, first of all, she used very weird language, a cap. I've never heard anybody refer to that as a cap. But pop up this headline. It says RFK Jr. said he'd sign a federal ban on abortions after 3 months of pregnancy. Now, I want to make it clear. He did not say that. What he did say is that he would not sign a federal right to an abortion under Roe v. Wade. And like I say, Roe v. Wade, amended by Casey in 92, I think it had it down to 23 weeks?
It was 28 with Roe, I think, and 23 to 24 with Casey.
Yes, and so because that is what is determined at the time of Roe, 28 was the viability, and then in Casey in 92, it was bumped up to 23 weeks, I think it was, viability. So he's not spent a lot of time thinking about this. at all. Now, just to be clear, he's running for president.
Yeah, that or Medicare for all. Oddly, he just hasn't really.
Well, no,
thought
Medicare
about
for all. He has basically said
Write that
impossible.
off, yeah.
He's already written it off. We played that video the other day.
I know, but he didn't seem to have like a very. He was
not running on it.
vacillating between single payer or saying no, and then I mean, it just
No,
was not a clear answer. So
Did he? Oh, he was very
He's
clear.
no.
I'm not going to pursue single payer health insurance, and he doesn't even think a public option is worth expending any of his political cachet on. But here and then he walks it back, and he says he misunderstood the question, and he does not support legislation banning abortion. But again, he's also not answering the question. The question is, would you sign federal legislation that essentially creates the Roe v. Wade standard, amended by Casey, into federal law? Would you sign legislation that would do that? This is legislation that people have been, lamenting Democrats didn't pursue under Obama.
And this is, to be clear, for like basically a right to privacy for an abortion, not like a right to an abortion. Like the state's not going to help you if you're, say, price discriminated from getting an abortion.
Correct. Right. The right to choose an abortion as opposed to providing abortions as a right. Whereas, there are other, public schooling is a right in this country under, statutory. And so Kennedy, first of all, NBC writes the wrong headline. And then Kennedy's response is also very evasive. Because Kennedy's now able to say, like, no, I'm not supporting a federal ban on abortion. But he's also not supporting a federal statute to make Roe, amended by Casey, the law of the land. In other words, to inhibit states from curtailing the right to get an abortion anytime before 23 weeks of pregnancy. And in fact, he would drop it down to 12, as he says.
15, 21 weeks, 3 months, whatever.
that's just a Republican position.
That is a.
I mean, Republicans have thought about it more.
They've passed that in states.
That's their stated position, at least. And then you have their real position was that they actually do want to codify their bans into federal law.